Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and tonight we have our intel update for the global, how do we say, madness that's going on planet Earth as the human race, I guess, plunges into the final chaos, out of which will come the new world order. At least that's what they all hope, those that are in Masonry and those that are in this new world order up to their eyeballs. That's what they're hoping. And we have, again, Larry Taylor with us, and I really appreciate Larry coming on. He's not feeling all that well, so we praise the Lord that he has joined us and can help us with this update. Hi, Larry. How you doing?
Hello, Stuart. Feeling just a little bit better. Been a rough day, though.
Yeah, boy, if you get allergic reactions to certain things, it can really be rough. Anyway, where do you want to start? What's going on? Let's start with the Syrian, Golan, Putin's silence, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that's a good place to hang the hat, at least to begin with. Because that thing, as I understand it, can, how do we say, explode overnight, anytime.
There's a lot going on over there, as we all know, and for those that's listened, and followed the intel updates, we've been reporting a lot of problems Israel's been having with its northern border, and then it's begun to have problems with its southern border, and there's a consolidation of enemies has formed around both borders, actually, on the, real quickly, on the Egypt-Sinai side, which is actually, I guess you could say, the Egyptian and Israeli border, and and the Gaza. Gaza's right there too, and of course Hamas has begun to fire their rockets again over into southern Israel, and Israel's retaliating, and this is ongoing. But now there appears to be not only intelligence reports, but also real-time data that ISIS has somewhat joined up with Hamas, and that they are going to try to coordinate terror attacks and rocket attacks against Israel together. And at the same time, you've got this really volatile situation with Assad's Syria, his Syrian army, that have been firing now for a week or more, firing artillery into Israel's Golan, into some towns there, locally in that area. Now, interestingly, we reported the other day that the U.S. Embassy has told people to not go north. In other words, don't move into the northern Golan area at all. It's too volatile. Israel has been attacking, but now we're hearing that ratchet up a little bit because Syria has begun to fire their S-200, which is not as capable as the S-3s and S-400s that Iran has been given or Russia has. And but they are firing them. And, you mentioned Putin's silence. There is some scattered coming out in Middle East news that Putin has given Assad in Syria the nod to fire on Israeli aircraft. Now, there was a report that one was shot down, and Israel, of course, is saying that did not happen. And, of course, Israel has the capabilities to avoid those S-200s pretty much. But it is volatile, Stuart. It's volatile.
So if Putin has given the nod for Assad, go ahead and shoot down Israeli aircraft. Is that not an act of war by not only Syria but by Russia against Israel, who they were just buddies here a little bit ago? Of course, we have the Psalm 2 war, which is kind of interesting, where the kings and the rulers of the earth all get together, kind of like they're making a play here, and we're just watching the stage. But this thing could explode in a mistake. because if Israel were to take out something in Damascus, which the Bible says it does in Isaiah chapter 17, I can't imagine that Putin would not consider that a major act of war, and that would be a hook in the jaw and bring him down upon the mountains of Israel. And, of course, that has grave ramifications for the United States.
Well, the real crazy pin in this whole situation is the fact that Israel is reporting that all of this is orchestrated out of Iran, that Iran is literally pushing the envelope on attacking Israel and trying to coordinate attacks on the northern and southern border at the very same time. And, of course, you're aware of the thousands of missiles that Hezbollah has. And
yes.
The Israeli generals has already warned, especially Hezbollah, and of course they've warned Syria too, that they're going to, if they do respond, it'll be big. And we're looking at all that. But this seems to be coordinated. Putin seems to be somewhat staying in the background, and Iran's doing a lot of the coordination of the attacks. What's interesting, though, a lot of ISIS has moved into the Damascus suburbs and north of there, and at the same time you've got the ISIS members in the Sinai that's working with Hamas. So, you've got ISIS here in the middle of this mix.
Well, who was it that had the vision that something happened that caused Israel to go in and wipe out every man, woman, baby, and whatnot over of the Palestinians? I mean, they just cleaned them out.
Yeah, that was Henry.
There wasn't anything
Gruver.
left. Was that Henry Gruver?
Yes.
And if I remember the vision, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that was Henry Gruver, and he actually published a short book on that same, saying that it's an end-time scenario and that at one point Israel will literally wipe them out. I mean, it'll be no more problem with them anymore. And so, what's interesting, Stuart, all the other forces are using the front lines, basically, of the Palestinians. The Palestinians don't realize they're basically cannon fodder and caught in the middle of this thing. And ISIS is well known to use, men, women, and children hostages in front of their attacks. And so I don't know. The Palestinians haven't learned anything in all these years.
Well, if I recall that vision correct, didn't he say that after this occurs, all the nations of the world basically gathered in Geneva?
I think that's right.
And they told America yay or nay on Israel, and we voted against Israel.
If I remember correctly, you're accurate. That is very accurate.
So then I guess the Lord retaliated against the United States. There's a fellow that wrote a book about that every time we do something that displeases the Lord when it comes to Israel, that we get nailed. And he wrote a book about almost even up. The Israelis went into one of those places, and I can't remember what happened, but we did something, and we got retaliated. Almost identical number of people hurt or made homeless, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of interesting how the Lord responds, and he generally responds in nature. But now you had made mention before we got on the air about, I just want to make sure I got this right, that there's a lot of missiles that Israel has. Now, are these the nuclear firecrackers aimed at Iran?
That's my understanding. Now, this was reported as one of Colin Powell's emails that have been hijacked or hacked and has been released, and the email claims that he's telling someone that Israel has 200 nuclear missiles pointed at Iran. And now I can't say that's true, but it appears that this is one of the hack job, along with a lot of them about Hillary Clinton. But this seems to be one about Israel and its nukes, and people have tried to keep that quiet for years.
Well, yeah. Has Israel ever admitted they had any nukes at all? It took them years if they ever did admit it.
No, I don't think they ever have confirmed it, except that the Obama administration has let slip that information. So that probably was on purpose.
Well, I know the relationships between Obama and Netanyahu are not at all what you would call a love relationship. It seems to be a massive hatred concept, and I think America is making a terrible mistake. Now, I know a lot of people do not understand who Israel really is over there or what they're there for. And folks, you got to go into Jeremiah chapter 50 and 51, and it pretty well explains why the Lord set up Israel as he did, using the rich men of the earth. This was a Rothschild concept. Israel is basically considered anti-Christ to the core. They're basically considered rich men run. And this is the way it's supposed to be. I call them pre-tribulational Israel. And they are about to go under what only one could call a period of intense, how do we say, Larry, attitude adjustment?
That's a good term. I think you're right.
So, folks, I know a lot of people out there hate Israel. They think Israel is pretty much garbage, and it's a thorn in everybody's side. That's exactly what Bible prophecy said, and that's why God put it there. He says, with you, Israel, this little tiny sliver of land, he's going to use it to bring down the entire global civilization, and that is why everybody's got their eyes over there looking at it. They hate Israel. They hate Netanyahu. No matter what he does, he can't do it right, and it's a lot of hypocrisy, really, but if you understand the basics behind the biblical prophecies, then you understand why Israel's there in the first place. It's there to bring in the millennial reign. And I think subconsciously the world knows it. That's my take. Don't you think, Larry, that the world subconsciously knows that when Israel began to form, that there was trouble coming?
Oh, I believe you're exactly right. Now, the one that wrote that book, if I remember right, about Israel, and I think he called it Eye to Eye, but it was Bill Koenig with Koenig.
That's right.
News. And very interestingly, and if I remember right, and sometimes I get overload, but if I remember right, I think that whatever event occurred, we had that Katrina incident, and that was what he was pointing as payback, so to speak.
Yes.
House
for house.
But oh yeah. And now Bill's got a new book out. Now I don't have it and haven't read it, but I've seen it on his website. And boy, he has good news. Watch.org. It's watch.org is Bill's site. And incredible. He keeps up with the Middle East really good. And he's got a new one out talking about Obama revealed. And I don't have it yet, but it's just brand new.
Is that full of love notes for Obama, do you think?
I wouldn't think that would be true. I think it's a little maybe revelatory notes.
Now, this new Bible code that, was it Glazerson that did this? The latest one on Obama and Hillary?
Yes.
For that to say an abomination before the Lord really is kind of a blunt, very nasty viewpoint on the part of the Lord from an earthly perspective, that he would call them an abomination. I mean, after all, it seems like the American people love both of them, according to the polls.
Well,
but is Trump gaining? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that it is interesting because I was kind of surprised that Richard Shaw and Glazerson got together and actually did that video because, they've held a lot of the end times Torah codes and haven't showed a lot of them in 2016, 2017 time frame. And but the interesting thing is that it does talk about Hillary Clinton and Obama and calls them abominations, and it basically is tied into total, complete governmental corruption.
In other words, lawlessness.
Absolutely.
Which is what the Bible says about Babylon the Great. It's totally lawless at the end. Well, the Constitution's shredded. It doesn't mean anything anymore. Apparently the government could care less. Basically, on all levels of government, you can go from township to county to city government to state government, all the way up through, and it just seems that most of them don't seem to care what the Bill of Rights has to say or what the Constitution actually says. So I guess that's a document that's sort of been shredded. Next on the list, North Korea. What is going on with these saber-rattling concepts and nukes, which ties us into Ed Dames' To Kill Shot, as well as actually the Armageddon script?
Well, it's so interesting because at the same time that this is going on, we understand that China somewhat is a handler of the North Koreans. In other words, kind of maintains a leash a little bit on North Korea. We've got Japan now because of Obama's lack of and his movement out of the South China Sea, basically, are turned to the blind eye towards that activity. But China, Japan has sent ships now to do some confrontation with China over that region. And it seems like the lease that China may have on North Korea has been loosened up a little. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of reports coming out of South Korea how that they're moving nukes around in northern Korea, and they're very concerned that this could go nuclear. And at the same time, it's a report out there very bluntly saying that South Korea has devised some kind of plan to take out the leadership of North Korea conventionally. So, there's another lit fuse.
Well, that would mean that this kid that runs North Korea, and he is kind of a child, I guess, in some ways, at least mentally, he might just decide to take out South Korean's capital and eliminate their leadership. Do they have any plans to retaliate? And what have we got, 36,000 of our own troops there?
I think so, somewhere in that area, I suppose.
And he's been getting rid of some of his generals and whatnot. And it just seems that, it was Ed Dames, Dr. Doom, that said that the North Korea would use a nuke in anger.
That's right.
And with all this saber rattling going on, and we're still involved in exercises over there, are we not?
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, we just since they've just fired the 3 missiles, and Japan failed to stop one of them that landed right there by their shores. Obama's been flying some nuclear-capable aircraft over South Korea. Now, that's supposed to rattle a sword towards North Korea, but there you go. I mean, the last few months of Obama may be very, very, what would you say, mass-confused situations, one after the other. Well, like he said, Obama mentioned one time, they said, well, he was in the waning time of his administration. He said, well, I can do a lot in 6 months.
Well, he also said one time, and I don't remember when he said it, but he said, World War III could start, and I wouldn't be able to stop it.
That's right.
So would indicate that the rich men of the earth are indeed, as the Albert Pike thing, he was a Mason back years ago. He's dead now. But he wrote a letter, and that letter was actually in one of the English, I guess you could call it museum. And I actually got a picture of it when it was enclosed in glass. But that letter spoke of the 3 world wars that Albert Pike, I guess through a vision or however he found it, outlined the 3 world wars. The first 2 have gone down exactly as he wrote it, which would lead one to believe that World War III likewise is going to go down exactly as he wrote it. And I've often wondered if ISIS, which is really a fairly small group of people, but he mentioned in there that they would rise up and they would be so horrific in their treatment of people that it would ultimately cause the people, the global citizens basically, to rise up to put an end to it. And that leads into this war between Christianity, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And that's essentially, is it not, where we are right now? This is basically a war between Islam, Judaism, and of course they hate Christians. All you got to do is look at Obama's attitude towards the Christians, which is now kind of spread throughout the United States at all levels of government. You can praise Allah, but you better not mention the word Jesus Christ or you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
That's very true.
So, what's your take on this possible Armageddon script? Because in that script, if I remember right, there would be a war would break out between North Korea and South Korea. The Chinese would invade Taiwan. There would be trouble in the Middle East and the Baltic regions, and we would be spread so thin we couldn't do anything to stop any of it. Maybe that's what Obama was talking about. And maybe that's what Putin was talking about. What do you think?
That sounds really interesting, what you put together there, because you basically have identified where we're sitting at the moment, actually. Throughout the world, all of this is right on the verge of beginning, and of course, Obama has basically brought our military to the lowest level even before the World War.
Yes,
we're going to find ourselves on the short end of the stick for sure.
Well, it's very interesting, I think, folks, if you would read Ezekiel 38 and 39, and I know it's, to me anyway, and this is my opinion, that it's been grossly misinterpreted, that when they come down against the mountains of Israel, they're already there, and I'm talking about Putin or whoever who's in charge, but Gog and Magog from the land of Magog. When they're on the mountains of Israel, it says they think an evil thought. I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, to them that are at rest, those that have gotten cattle and goods. I will go up, meaning northward, over the poles, and I will take out a nation. Get out your globe, look at where Russia is, go over the North Pole, and where do you hit? The United States. Then you go into Jeremiah chapter 50, 51, Isaiah chapter 47, Revelation 17 and 18, and I think they all merge. So my warning has always been, when you see Putin or whoever it is and his allies go against Israel, I don't know how this is all going to work out, but when they do go down against those mountains of Israel, we have very short time and we're going to be taken out. We're going to be neutralized and destroyed basically from coast to coast. So, yeah, you're right, Larry. I mean, it's all starting to form together. And talking about Syria, Damascus, Isaiah chapter 17. Have there ever been any reports of Damascus removing their biological and chemical missiles from that area?
No, there hasn't. And another thing, too, Stuart, I'd mentioned that, we recently saw SpaceX have a very mysterious explosion, and the Israeli satellite destroyed, a spy satellite that they were to launch. And then Israel the other day just launched what they call their OPEC 11 spy satellite themselves, got it into orbit, and it has failed. And so basically what you're looking at here, and some of the data coming out of Israel, is the fact that Israel is being blinded by someone. They're being blinded in their intelligence gathering processes via satellite. So they're really hampered right now, and you can see how some of this seems to be going together. Yeah, and you saw the video, of that SpaceX explosion.
Yes, that sure looked to me like a UFO of some sort, whatever it was, probe, drone, whatever. But it seems very, very mysterious that Israel is being blinded or allowed to be blinded by the Lord, I guess is the one way to word it, which tends to make me think that Israel is getting very, very close to the, the time of Jacob's trouble.
Yeah.
So they're going to go under the rod, and it's not going to be pleasant for them at all. So, how many nuclear weapons does Israel actually have? Does anybody know?
I don't really think anybody knows exactly. Of course, Colin Powell's report, and I believe some of the stuff released by the Obama administration appear to say 200 plus.
Okay. So I'm sure they got more than 200. If they got 200 missiles aimed at Iran, and don't they have some sort of a, kind of like the Russians do, how do we call it, a doomsday weapon? Where they can do it.
I do know that they've got some weapons that I've heard about that are very unconventional, and they will use them, because they lean toward that Samson option. And as long as Netanyahu's in there, he will defend Israel.
But Putin has remained basically silent so far. He hasn't rattled his cage other than to say, look, if things go south in Syria and that area, I will be down there in a couple of hours. So that was really the last warning.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Okay, getting back to the North Korean and Ed Dames and the kill shot. This, as I understood him to say, when this nuke goes off in anger, the North Koreans are the first to do it. That is a preliminary warning for the solar kill shot, CME series. Is that right?
That's one. Yeah, that's one of the preliminary warnings. The first one, I believe, he said that he saw was North Korea using a nuclear weapon in anger, and then the second one, of course, is he's talked about a space shuttle that was brought down because of sun activity, and then trouble time.
Now, everybody was kind of laughing at him because we don't send our space shuttles up anymore. So therefore, he must have been wrong. But India, you said, has a shuttle exactly like the United States does, and they're active, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I saw photographs of it, and it looks just like our space shuttle design. I mean, so if he did see that, a shuttle being brought back down, it certainly could be the Indians doing that, or possibly a combination of India and Europe, who's doing a lot of activity right now too.
So, now that has to come down because of a meteor shower, right?
Basically, if I remember right, he talked about incoming of meteorites, or is what I had. Go ahead.
Yeah, isn't that what the movie Armageddon? Isn't that how that started?
Yeah, that one, and not only that one. There's a few movies out that has that same scenario in it.
So it makes you wonder where they're getting this information from, unless they know perfectly well what's coming. They've probably already gone out. I mean, we got the TR-3Bs, and people keep forgetting about those. They're real. There are just too many pictures of them. Even Stan Deyo worked with Edward Teller, and then you've got Bob Lazar who worked with Edward Teller, and they're talking about anti-gravity and all of this stuff. So would that not enable them to go out there and view what's actually out there?
I would think that it would. I would think certainly that it would.
So, what else should we hit here? There's all kinds of stuff going around the world.
Well, something kind of interesting, Stuart, is Stan Deyo put up a kind of a prophetic report that I found rather telling today. It's actually a report by WorldNet Daily, and it says that an island has emerged from the Sea of Galilee, and it's called a Messianic sign, and it says that the biblical lake's ecological crisis is linked to Isaiah, and quotes Isaiah 9:1-2, and the Talmudic prophecies. And I looked at the photograph, and there is land actually forming in the Sea of Galilee. So it's an island there that has begun, and they are claiming this is prophetic of the coming of the time of the Messiah.
Gee, interesting that it's in 2016, 2017, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, there was a rabbi back in 1200 who said that 2017 began the Messianic era.
Huh.
So I guess people like to argue and debate over prophecy, but it would seem to me that you've got two choices. One, 3.5 years has already been fulfilled of Daniel's lost 70th week, and we're only looking at 3.5 years. Two, we have 7 years to go. When does it begin? Does it begin in 2017, and is the whole thing considered a Messianic age, the next age? Or exactly, so I guess we all wait. We pray, is that we be, how do we say, stand worthy. But with all these signs coming together, I just don't see how this is going to last a whole lot longer. What's your take? I think people are nervous. They don't know why, but they're just nervous.
Yeah, I think that they are. I kind of lean towards the concept of an overlap, where the ages overlap a little bit, like the law overlapped with grace, and
yes.
There was dual situations occurring at the very same time, and I say that's what caused so much confusion, religiously, so to speak. But I'm looking the same way, and what's very interesting too is your Omega code basically is talking the same time frame, and it seems 2016 and 2017 are really linked closely together. Now they're not even talking 2018, but a lot of the Messianic, or what I've heard is a lot of the Messianic references in the Torah codes in 2017 they're not releasing right now. So what you said may be true. We're certainly in a time frame, and if we are in an overlap, maybe that accounts for some of the confusion of the dual situations going on between the possibility that the closing out of the Age of Grace and the influx of millennial activity that we don't even recognize, particularly for what it is.
Yeah. Well, it is odd that Revelation chapter 2 and 3 close out the church age, because the church is never mentioned again. And it's very odd also that if you go into the people that are beheaded for the witness of the Lord are never called Christians or part of the church. So it almost appears as though there's kind of a change. People don't like the word dispensations, but really all the word dispensation means is God deals with people in one way, and then he deals with them in another way. And that's basically all you're watching is a changeover. Is that right?
Oh, that's the way I look at it. That each age or each dispensation, really, God deals with mankind in a certain way. And in each one of those, it appears that he changes that direction. And from what I can tell, Stuart, the millennium is really a strange puzzle because it gives clues, but it don't tell us how he really is dealing with mankind in the millennium, other than mankind may be rare as fine gold.
Yeah, it almost sounds like a repopulation effort. Go forth and multiply once again and refill the earth. And if you'd go back into Genesis, folks, and really read it closely, it sounds like something occurred prior to Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve are told, go forth and replenish the earth. Well, you don't replenish something unless there was something there that got taken away.
That's right.
And I know there's probably a lot of people who love to argue about that because people love to argue, but it seems that even Jeremiah makes a remark about a huge cataclysm that occurred to set up earth for the human race, for humanity as we know them today. We could call them Adamic. Is that your take, Larry, or how do you see that?
Yeah, well, one thing that's very interesting you mentioned earlier about movies sometimes having data that sometimes we don't have. There's a movie out, and I'd shared that with you the other day, talking about a movie that was named Epoch, E-P-O-C-H. And an epoch literally is a time frame of the way things are constructed, and then at the end of the epoch it changes again. And of course there's an Epoch 2 movie came out also. But whether it's dispensation or age or epoch, or you can use any of that terminology, I guess, but there comes a time when everything changes.
Yeah, and obviously, here again, we're dealing in opposition to general science. General science believes in uniformitarianism, in which earthquakes, volcanoes may go off here and there, but there's never a cataclysm. Major changes take place over thousands and thousands, if not millions of years. Whereas all the books of the ancients, the Bible, and most mystics and seers will tell you that that's just simply not true, as I understand it, and that we have long periods of quiet, but then as we're approaching another age change, everything begins to become, how do we say, unglued? Am I saying that right, do you think?
Oh, I think you're exactly right. And I was going to tell you, too, we're having some really, really bad storms here this evening while we're doing this show. So if you lose me, you'll know what happened.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the weather. Let's talk about that. This weather is brutal all over the world. And I've mentioned before that when I was professionally flying, we could get over, this is back in the, I'm going to say 60s, 70s, we could get over almost all squall lines 28,000 feet. You just fly over them. When I quit flying, when I turned in my wings, so to speak, you could have storms that were up to 80,000 feet. and you might have to travel hundreds of miles to get by a squall line to even find what we called saddlebacks, where there's a little area between storms and you could fly through there. And it's getting worse and worse, and I've noticed that for a long time, along with the fact that the magnetic poles are now changing rapidly. And that's even proven by animals and birds. They're acting strangely. We're having mass die-offs of all kinds of things. You guys down there in the Oklahoma, Arkansas area are really getting pulverized by earthquakes. What's the latest update there?
Well, you know, they are claiming now they've found a new fault line under Oklahoma that they weren't aware of before, and you know, and at the same time, you know, just this evening, it's like the air was supercharged, and it reminded me of the bots talking about the popcorn storms, because I looked outside and there must have been 11 or 12 of these popcorn storms all around me in a circle. And we're seeing a lot of that now. They're popping up all over the country, and they're unexplainable, basically, because they're not really fronts. They're literally almost like they're being created. And it appears electromagnetically that these are being created, whether by the sun or other than the sun, I suppose.
Well, wasn't it James McKinney that said that even hurricanes, there's a lot to do with the electric energies coming from the sun, more so than even ocean temperatures, that it was more related to electromagnetics?
Yeah. Yeah, he was saying that, and of course, you know, he kind of had to quit talking a lot of that, because he began to talk about these, the electromagnetic especially, when he was talking about a Planet X, basically, and then, well, probably he was a little too accurate.
Yeah, he was pretty much told to shut up, I think, because all of a sudden he kind of distanced himself from it. But you got guys like Marshall Masters that are right up front with it, and Ed Dames on his latest presentations was warning people, excuse me, that this was coming. And we better prepare for it. I don't know how you really are going to prepare for something of that magnitude, but I guess you do what you can and hope the Lord takes care of the rest.
Yeah.
But when you really look at this, I posed a question in my post on this evening. Are we really in the last days? You know, a lot of people just poo-poo that. They say, nah, you know, this has all gone on before and blah, 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 and it's no different than what it's been since the fathers fell asleep. We're all just going along, and you can talk about 2017, it's going to go sailing by, and then you're going to talk about 2020, and that'll go sailing by, and then you talk about 2030, and that'll go sailing by, and nothing happens. And it seems as though that there's something going on that the Lord may be playing in a way with these delays. Does it not sift people down? Do you remember the 88 reasons why Jesus was going to return in 1988?
I do. I remember that, yes.
Well, you know, everybody got really excited, but then a lot of people just dropped off.
Yeah.
Well, the ones that are serious about the Lord didn't drop off. They just went back to the drawing boards and said, well, what did we do wrong? Where did we mistake this? So we're kind of in that limbo stage, but I do know where the prophets said, particularly in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they said that the delay was going to be longer than even the prophets themselves would have ever realized. That the Lord's mercy and his compassion were going to delay things. But it also says it will come to pass. Though it tarry, although the vision tarry, it will surely come. And it will come to pass, and it will happen. So we've had delay after delay after delay, really, and of course, the general world, they just mock all the Christians anyway, and especially those who are, paying attention to biblical prophecy. So, it makes you wonder. But we got another sign, and I don't know if you paid any attention to the economics, but China is in the process of a heavy debt dump, and Deutsche Bank, which is a huge bank, is in trouble. We could be watching. I know a lot of the experts, not the mainstream people who run, how do we say, people's accounts and their 401ks and their IRAs and all of that. Most of those people are clueless. But when you get into the rogues, the people that really pay attention to what's happening economically, they are all warning that we are going to go down. John Williams, who's testified before Congress a number of times, this is his latest update. For all you folks out there interested in your dollar bills, August sales and production showed an intensifying, renewed downturn. Before inflation adjustment, August retail sales declined in all major sectors, sharply slowing annual growth. Nominal sales decline would have been twice as deep, but for boosts from seasonal adjustment, inconsistencies, and distortions. And he said, although August production suffered major monthly and annual hits, oil and gas exploration and extraction stopped the hemorrhaging. On and on he goes. And I mean, it's he always places the unemployment at 23% to 23.5%.
Well, what's interesting, Stuart, is the recent radio show we had with the author Davis Bunn, and his book, The Domino Effect, just came out. And remember what he said about that there were some real people that were talking to him about that what he was going to write, and they had major concerns that there was a domino effect coming, and that's really why he wrote the book, actually.
I think we're seeing the warning signs all over, and I don't think too many people are going to pay much attention to it, but I think they're going to wish they had, because if we have a shutdown, remember No Eyes in Phoenix Rising. Now, I've never been able to get my mind around this one. She says the stock market goes to zero. Wherever you are, that's where you are. And I asked a real estate agent, what could that possibly mean? Where you are, that's where you are. Bank closure, she said. Everything closes down. No real estate sells, no real estate buys. Wherever you are, that's where you are. Remember David Wilkinson and his vision of the collapse?
Yeah.
He said the banks were going to close for 6 months. Now, I don't know how you wrap your mind around that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say I remember brought that up about David Wilkerson, and that's one of the things, wherever somebody's living, you literally couldn't move anywhere else. I mean, wherever you are, you really are, and I do remember reading that in Phoenix Rising, I believe, and it is kind of odd, but I could see how that would happen. The government would probably also, when the banks went down or closed, declare an emergency situation, and nobody could really go anywhere hardly anyway.
Well, that would keep Obama in office, and he wouldn't have to assassinate Trump or Hillary or anybody else. All he'd have to do is assassinate the banks, and he'd have his national emergency, bring in martial law. Because when you stop and think about the ripple effects of a bank closure of that magnitude, I mean, how do people get food?
That's right.
How does transportation work? I mean, that's essentially a shutdown. And we could be looking at something
even to
like
the point,
that.
Yeah, even to the point, Stuart, and you're well aware of how a lot, the gas stations even, they wouldn't be able to operate with the banks all closed and possibly a grid loss, power loss. There's nobody going to go anywhere anyway because everything would shut down.
Well, if you had an economic failure or you had a CME kill shot like Ed Dames is talking about, and you lost the grid, I don't know if he was a government official, but he wrote a report about it and said that 90% of Americans would be dead within 1 year. I mean, a lot of them would be killing each other off. That's obvious. I mean, we don't have the same moral fiber or fortitude that we had during the Great Depression, where somebody would come up to your door and knock and say, "Can I work for a meal?"
Yeah.
Today they'll come up to your door and blow you away as soon as you open it and take what you've got. So there's a huge difference in the morality and the ethics of people today, which makes it a whole lot more frightening than it ever would have been during the Depression. So what else have you got?
Oh, I was, and one of the things too, I'd shared on Augusto's show the other day, this very interesting dream that I'd had about a plague that was possibly coming that would target haplogroups, that it would be a human mitochondrial DNA directed plague that would attack certain groups. And one of the interesting things in the dream was that there were some underground churches that were preparing because they knew it was coming. And the interesting thing is that, I just say that that's basically going to be part of the Psalm 2 war. I mean, it's all connected, it's all linked, and we already know who most of the world wants rid of today anyway, and you would have to say the rich men would be behind that.
So we do know, do we not, scientifically, that they've already developed targeted DNA groups?
That's true.
I think I read a bunch of articles on that. So that would fit into what you were shown about it.
Yeah.
So you were also shown something, I can't remember totally what it was about, but it looked like mercenaries or something were going into homes and they were just killing everybody.
Oh, that was many years ago. Yeah, that was groups that appeared to be mercenary in nature were coming into towns, and they were slaughtering the people. I mean, I don't know that they were. I don't know the origin particularly, but I remember that, and of course we're getting into a time frame where, if you look at dreams and visions of invasions and even what Red Elk talked about, that could begin to occur in any time of chaos. And one thing I looked at today, and I'd mentioned to you, was I said I'd been watching Obama and Hillary and Trump and all of the it appeared to me to be the classic ruler against ruler that's operating right now, which you just mentioned earlier, Jeremiah 51, and it looks like that's where we are. We're in the classic ruler against ruler combat, basically, where they're fighting each other. And when you look at all of these people, Stuart, they're the rich folks. George Soros. I mean, you can just name a long list of them. And the ones behind all of this, even the ones fighting, are the rich people. I don't see any poor people doing anything.
Well, it is fascinating because when you really stop and think about it, ruler against ruler has now reached the apex of the top of the heap. It's like king of the mountain. You're at the presidential level now. I mean, we've had ruler against ruler with the Congress and everything and the Supreme Court. And I believe it actually began way back when the election of George Bush. And that went all the way, if I recall, to the Supreme Court. And that was really the beginning of major battles between changes of government. And I do remember, and I don't know if you remember it, but they had two bald eagles that collided in Duluth and crashed at the airport. And I thought to myself when I saw that, that sounds very much like what Isaiah and Jeremiah imply, that the two houses, the House and the Senate, they become unfunctionable. They can't function anymore. They argue, they fight, they can't get anything done. And to have two bald eagles collide and crash at the airport was very, very telling, I thought, of maybe this is exactly where we are in Isaiah, where, you know, it more or less implies that our government comes to a standstill because of special interest groups. They can't get anything done. They're just fighting all the time. And basically, I guess that's where we're at. And now, like you say, we're at the presidential level where they're tearing each other apart. And who knows who's going to win? I know the Russians have just issued a warning about Trump possibly being assassinated.
I saw that. Yeah.
And then you've got some comments about maybe they've taken Hillary out. But you say you saw Hillary and she seems fine, or is that a double?
Well, it appears to be her. Matter of fact, what was interesting, you know, after there were some early reports of a double, you know, and we've heard for years that leaders have a body double somewhere.
Oh, yes.
I think Saddam Hussein, they said, had like 2 or 3 of them. And but actually, believe it or not, Fox News was talking about a body double for Hillary Clinton early this morning, and I thought, wow, I can't believe I'm hearing that.
They did. They were
yeah.
Of course, there is a lady that does pose as her. She makes, I don't know if she makes any money doing it, but I guess she has a lot of fun doing it. And she does look almost exactly like Hillary. Slight differences, and this is where I think some of the people picked up on it, because the lady that came out, and it was not Hillary, it was a double. And people began to run these programs on computers, the facial identification programs, and there's big differences, and they showed it on YouTube, some of the differences. So who knows? I mean, the whole thing. I remember Dr. Peter Bader talked about that they all have doubles. And you never know whether you're looking at the real person or a double. I suppose it's kind of like a food taster for a king. Not necessarily the best job you could have, you know.
That's true.
Anyway, what else you got? We got about 90 seconds left to go.
I was just going to say, I noticed
to the people?
Well, I was just going to say today that I did notice the sun was a little further south than we've had, and we're still having some very unusual earthquakes around the planet, and there seems to be a wobble or tilt that's a little bit off.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. People that are really paying attention, even taking pictures, they are showing changes that ought to be there. And, of course, you had the Inuit Indians who navigate by the stars, the sun, and the moon, are all saying, hey, this is all changed. So, yeah, we're heading into the final phase of the wobble of Isaiah chapter 24, if folks want to look it up. It wobbles like a top, and then it tips over. How can they reach you, Larry, before we run out of time here?
LarryWTaylor.org. That's LarryWTaylor.org, and read my blog and just follow the news reports.
Okay, folks, you really should go there. Larry probably posts more than just about anybody when it comes to flash news. And we thank everybody for listening, and do try and join our membership site. Anyway, we're over, and thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you again. Night.
Good night.